Good afternoon, it's 4 p.m. We're bringing you the developing news and the stories behind the headlines. This is Storycon, I'm Regina. Some stories we're watching this Friday, April 4. The Department of Foreign Affairs confirms the detention of 3 Filipinos in China for alleged espionage. It says the Philippine consulate in Guangzhou is providing all necessary assistance, including legal support. The DFA is urging China to ensure that its investigation follows due process and that the rights of the arrested Filipino nationals are upheld. Inflation dropped to 1.8% in March from 2.1% the month before. The decline was attributed to lower prices in food and non-alcoholic beverages. President Bongbong Marcos said that his government is working on programs to reduce food prices and boost production, such as kadiwa and rice for all. And the Management Association of the Philippines is calling for the creation of an Economic Security Council. That's to address the impact of the United States' 17% reciprocal tariff that was imposed on the Philippines. The group is also urging government agencies like DTI and DFA to collaborate in mitigating risks from the steeper levies. And South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol is officially impeached following his imposition of martial law last year. Seoul's Constitutional Court upheld a parliamentary motion to oust Yoon. With this, a new presidential election will be held within 60 days. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo will serve as acting president until a new leader is inaugurated. Joining me today, as always, we've got Storycon's resident political pundit, Ronald Llamas.
Happy weekend.
Happy
Friday.
Happy weekend. Wala si Ed today. He's filming. And from the Philippine Star, Editor-in-Chief, Amy Pamintuan. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, happy weekend. Ronald, generic yung ano mo kapag si ano. Kapag si Red siyang nag-introduce sa'yo.
Subdued daw siya. O ano na yung ano?
Parang-
Fashion, anong critique mo today?
Eh, subdued din, no? Subdued.
Yung color ni Amy?
Subdued, oh.
Uy, may good news for a change. 1.8% na lang inflation.
Naramdaman mo?
Ikaw naramdaman mo?
Parang hindi.
Well, mahal. Ano?
May gestation period pa yan, eh.
Oh, matagal-tagal pa.
Dahil matataas naman ang bayad kasi kuryente.
Oo,
Yung
that's
matataas,
true.
di ba?
So pag nag-grocery ka, hindi mo na-feel yung 1.8% na lang siya.
Medyo. Tsaka it takes time bago mo maramdaman yan. Paano 1 month lang yan, eh. Di ba?
Pero
Kung
it's on a downward trend.
Kung halimbawa ay medyo matagal, baka maramdaman mo. No?
Ikaw, Ami.
Next week, tataas uli kuryente.
That's yun yung offsetting factor.
Yes. Saka hindi ko nararamdaman yung mga max SRP nila sa pork and dahil mamalengke ako every week eh.
Yeah.
Hindi sumusunod yung mga, hindi sumusunod dyan sa, ewan ko sa nila na ako yung mga
Suggested
SRP
nga
nila na yan sa meat, ha?
Suggested nga, ibig sabihin pwedeng hindi pansinin. Suggestion
Max or
lang.
max.
Uy, that's true, no? Suggested siya. So, hindi
suggested
siya
retail price.
Hindi siya price cap. I think maraming tao no confused about it, no? Kasi pag maximum suggested retail price, ibig sabihin, hindi mo walang price cap yun. The retailers can still...
Pero bakit iniimbestigahan ng Department of Agriculture? yung compliance.
Yun na nga. So,
Parang may masabing may ginagawa.
ayun ba yun? Kasi tinanong ko na ang DA nito noon why would you impose MSRP kung wala naman penalties? Kasi ano yung penalty if mahuli
siyempre
ka?
walang susunod.
Yeah.
Di ba?
Yeah, because of course, suggestion lang.
Suggested nga eh.
So I don't know, hindi ko pa rin naiintindihan bakit may MSRP. I suppose it's a way to impose, I don't know, moral suasion.
Marami naman talagang bagay na hindi mahirap intindihin.
Okay.
Katulad kahapon, no, napanood mo ba yung Senate hearing?
Yes,
Sabi
yung
ni
walang
Bato,
tao.
sabi ni Bato, yung mga tumulong sa arrest ni Digong, isusumbong kay Trump. Lagot daw kay Trump.
Sinabi
Yung
na
mga-
niya yan sa atin when he was here, di ba?
Ito, inulit niya sa Senate hearing.
Sinabi na niya, Ami,
Hindi,
remember?
kasi may sanction daw ang US under Trump sa ICC. Yung sanction na yun are already in place actually.
Parang, dati pa yun.
Di ba?
Last year pa yun eh.
Ah,
At dahil
in
yung kay,
place na yun eh.
at dahil yung kay Netanyahu tsaka kay Putin.
Dahil kay Netanyahu and Putin yun. Oo.
Yes.
Hindi sila makapunta ngayon sa US.
Yes.
Sila karinkan.
Pero
Diba?
may lumabas kasi na fake news na may pinirmahan daw na letter si Trump, di ba? Na pinapagalitan ng ICC sa pag-aresto kay Digong. Pero fake pala yun, fake. Baka yun yung
Na-debunk
binatayan
na
niya.
yan, na-debunk na.
Parang yung survey
Hindi
nyo,
ko nakita
magkaiba kayo ng survey. So malamang isa doon fake. Doon sa survey na yan.
Yung sa akin, SWS eh. Hindi ko alam kanina yung fake na sinasabi mo, but mine was SWS. So, I don't know.
Medyo mahaba yung Zoom ni Bongo. Hindi siya usually nagsasalita ng ganun kahaba, di ba, Ami? Medyo mahaba yung kanyang doon sa Senate hearing.
Kasi wala nga ibang guest. Magkakaroon ng third hearing, sinabi na ni Amy. There will be a third hearing. At ang sinabi naman ng Malacanang, they're doubling down. Meron silang executive privilege.
Ito na yata yung guest natin.
Okay, at this point, we have to bring in today's guests. We are still talking all things Duterte. We've got Dr. Fadi El Abdallah joining us via Zoom from the Netherlands. He is the spokesperson and public affairs unit head of the International Criminal Court. Good afternoon, Dr. Abdallah. Can you hear us okay?
Good
Yes,
afternoon,
hi, good
Doctor.
Good afternoon, Doctor.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Thanks for making time for us. My name is Regina. In the studio with me is Ronald, and joining us via Zoom is Amy. We recognize that you've been asked the question about jurisdiction numerous times already, so I don't want to dwell into that. So I'd like to look forward, if that's okay. So let's look towards the confirmation of charges hearing. And I think by now, most people here have a basic understanding of what would happen at the confirmation of charges hearing, but could you walk us through the procedure, what it'll be like, and give us an insight into why it was scheduled 6 months down the road? Initially, we were under the impression that it would have been scheduled within weeks after the first hearing.
Well, first we need to explain maybe shortly what is a confirmation of charges hearing. It's not a trial, it's not a mini trial, it's a phase that allows the judges to decide whether or not the case should go to a trial. So when we have an arrest warrant, that means that the judges have only seen the evidence presented by the prosecutor without counter-argumentation by the defense. So the confirmation of charges hearing is the moment for the defense to present its own argumentation to kind of test the evidence that is presented by the prosecutor. And that would allow the judges to know whether or not the case should move to a trial. Also, it's the moment where, for the first time, the judges would be also listening to the legal representation of the victims that would be authorized to participate in the hearing. Victims are not witnesses. Witnesses is a different category. Victims here are participants to the proceedings to explain their own points of views and their own observations and legal arguments. But they are not there to present evidence or to add charges against the suspect. They are only participating to make the voice of the victims heard inside the courtroom. But they are not necessarily witnesses, as I mentioned.
So, Doctor, it's like an arraignment. It's like an arraignment,
well, I don't know. In each country there are different different systems. So I don't know what's exactly the national system in the Philippines. But for us, it's a kind of a filter to know whether or not we should go to a trial or stop the case at the pre-trial level. Now, when I mentioned that gives you already an idea why did we need at least 6 months between the initial appearance and the confirmation of charges hearing, for two reasons. The first reason is that, of course, the prosecutor needs to provide the defense with the evidence on which he intends to rely during this confirmation of charges hearing. It's not all the evidence that the prosecutor has, but it is the prosecutor's evidence that he considers that enough to convince the judges that the case should move to a trial. But for that, we need to respect the rights of the defense, the presumption of innocence, but also the right to have enough time and facilities to prepare for a meaningful defense, meaning to be able to receive this evidence in a meaningful way, in an organized way, to investigate this evidence, eventually to find additional evidence that maybe the defense wants to present to the judges. So this takes time to disclose the evidence to the defense, but also to allow the defense the time to check all this evidence. And the second reason, as I was mentioning, is the issue of the participation of the victims that also needs to be organized. We need to communicate with the potential victims what are their rights, how to seek participation in these proceedings, and actually fill the applications and give the judges the time to decide on which applications would be within the parameters of this specific case. Because we are speaking about the participation of victims that are concerned by the parameters of this case specifically. So that takes a certain amount of time. That's why we need to organize the confirmation of charges a few months after the initial appearance.
When will the appeal for the interim release happen?
Ami, go ahead.
Dr. Abdullah, we were told that the Duterte camp is planning to apply for his interim release. I've been trying to find out the circumstances under which this could be granted. Could you tell us more about it? I understand they have to be extraordinary circumstances for this to be granted.
And when will that happen?
Well, I will not speculate on the outcome of such a request if it is submitted to the judges. It will be for the judges to decide on it. The general legal framework is that, of course, a suspect is presumed innocent. And for that, there is a possibility to be free. The arrest has to be justified. And the judges can consider that the arrest is justified if we consider that the suspect would not be voluntarily cooperating with the court and appearing before the judges when they order so, or that the suspects and his potential network would be putting witnesses at risk or creating obstacles for the investigation, or if there are circumstances that shows that the suspect might be continuing to commit crimes falling under the ICC jurisdiction. So these are the reasons that needs to be, at least one of them needs to be there to justify the arrest. So if the judges consider that potentially if there is a request for an interim release and that there is a state that is willing to accept the release of a suspect on its territories and to implement any measures that the judges may consider necessary to ensure that the person will be appearing before the judges when ordered, that there will be no obstacles or risks created for the investigations or for the witnesses, and that the person will not be continuing to commit crimes, then it's a possibility for the judges to grant an interim release, a conditional interim release. But of course, it would be for the judges to decide on that. So we should not speculate. If the defense presents such a request, the judges will consider what is possible and what is to be granted in this context.
Ronald.
Yeah, from your vantage point, Doctor, what is the difference of this case compared to other cases, previous cases in the ICC? Aside from probably this is the first Asian to be tried in the International Criminal Court, what are the differences?
Well, for the ICC, all cases are serious and all cases have to be of a sufficient gravity. This is a main element, and we consider that it is our duty and our mandate to bring justice to the victims and to endeavor to uncover the truth about the allegations with the full respect of the rights of the defense, of course. Now, it is indeed the first case that in which there is an arrest related to a person from Asia, yes. But on the substance of the matter, we are always speaking about serious crimes, crimes against humanity, war crimes, or genocide. And this case or other cases, they are all treated with the same respect, full respect for the victims and for the defense's rights.
As you said,
During the submission of the Duterte camp before the court, our former executive secretary said that the ICC wants a prize catch in the person of the former President Duterte. And this criticism has continued in the Philippines. If you might not be aware of it, we just want to get your reaction to this.
And actually, to add to that, the longstanding criticism is that the ICC has not been able to apply international law evenly and fairly, and that there's a perception that you're targeting, countries in the global south. Again, your reaction, please, Dr. Fadi.
Well, first, the ICC can only apply the law. So when there is jurisdiction, when there are evidence about a certain crimes, it is our duty to be applying the law and bringing cases and trying to bring justice to the victims. That is our mandate and that is our duty. And we do apply that evenly over all the conflicts on which the ICC have a jurisdiction. So we are not looking at any profiles. We are looking at the evidence and on what is the applicable law in a certain situation. Now, if you look at the list of the suspects before the ICC and the defendants before the ICC and the list of the investigations that are before the ICC, you will notice that it's in 4 different continents. It's related to conflicts in Afghanistan, in Philippines, in Venezuela, in Africa, in Ukraine, in Palestine, and there has been arrest warrants issued against a variety of suspects in all these different situations and circumstances. So there is no approach that is focused on a certain region or on a certain category of states, but it is actually where we have jurisdiction, we have the duty to bring justice to the victims within the legal framework of the ICC.
You talked about the principle of assumption of innocence until proven guilty earlier. On the one hand, you have that, but on the other hand, the suspect, the subject is detained without option of bail until such time that, until the confirmation of charges hearing. So how do we reconcile that? How does the principle of fairness for the accused apply here?
Well, first, at a pretrial phase, we are not calling them accused, we call them suspects. And of course, there is a presumption of innocence. And that's why, as I was just mentioning to your colleague, the principle is that the arrest has to be justified. So we don't have a system of bail, but we have the possibility for a conditional interim release. And this is possible, but only if there are measures that can mitigate the risks of a person staying at large, not cooperating with the ICC, or putting in danger witnesses or the investigations, or eventually continuing to commit crimes. So the principle of the presumption of innocence means that the arrest is not the rule, it's actually the exception and has to be justified for each case, and the judges would always look at what are the justifications for the arrest and eventually the justification to keep the suspect in detention, and whether the reasons are still there or have changed.
Of course, Doctor, every case may be different from other cases. But do you have a ballpark figure on how usually the cases, how long the cases happen until conviction or non-conviction? Is it 3 years, 4 years on an average?
Well, I think we should not speculate about the trial. We are still at the pre-trial phase. We have to respect the presumption of innocence, and we have to see what would be the judge's decision on the confirmation of charges itself. Because if no charges are confirmed, the case would stop at the pre-trial level and it will not go ahead. So that's what I was saying, that the confirmation of charges is a kind of a filter to know whether or not the case should move to a trial phase or not. And normally, after the confirmation of charges phase is closed, the judges would have a 60 calendar days deadline to issue their decisions on the confirmation of charges. If one or more charges are confirmed, then the case moves to a trial. If none, then the case would stop at the pre-trial stage. Now, for a trial itself, in the eventuality that there is a trial, the length of the trial depends on so many different factors. Some trials took only a couple of months, others took several years. because it depends, of course, on the nature of the crimes, on the number of the charges, on the number of witnesses that needs to testify before the judges, on the different requests from the different parties. So it's practically impossible to predict how long would be a trial if we get to a trial after the completion of charges.
Also, so to recap, the decision on whether or not the case will proceed could take 60 days after the confirmation of charges hearing.
Yes, that's a general rule. Of course, the judges may give additional time for the parties to complement in writing their argumentation that they would have presented during the confirmation of charges hearing, which is only a matter of a couple of days normally. So then the 60 days deadline will start running after the written submissions, that then it is the closure of the confirmation of charges phase.
Is there an appeal
Doctor, the judges the judges who issue the arrest warrant are not necessarily the ones who will be trying the case, right? It will still be raffled off?
Well, the judges that are dealing with a pre-trial phase, in case they confirm the charges and the case moves to a trial, there will be not the judges that will be in the trial chamber. A trial chamber will be constituted of 3 judges, different from the judges of the pre-trial chamber that is looking at the case currently, and that's in the eventuality that the case would move to a trial. And that's, of course, we have to wait for the decision of the judges to know.
Will there be an appeals process composed of, again, different judges?
Yes. So in case there is a request to appeal a certain decision, whether a pre-trial decision or eventually a trial chamber's decision, the appeal is decided on by an appeals chamber that is composed of 5 judges, different from the judges that were in the pre-trial and eventually in the trial chamber. So yes, for each phase, it's a different set of judges that will have to decide in order to make sure that there is always this impartiality of the judges.
Dr. Fadi, when Duterte's common-law wife and daughter arrived at The Hague on March 26, they said they were not immediately granted entry into the detention facility, and they also brought suitcases of his personal clothing and other personal effects, but these were also not allowed in. I wonder if you could give us more context on that. What happened there?
Well, unfortunately, I cannot, because everything that is related to the private aspects of the life of a detainee has to remain confidential. It's a respect to their privacy and to their family life. What I can say is that the detention center has its own rules. It's not a prison. It's a detention center that allows a certain number of visits, mainly for counsel defense teams and also for family, but it has to be, of course, according to a certain schedule and to certain rules that needs to be applied there.
Is bringing in personal effects allowed to begin with? I mean, just generally speaking.
And again, I cannot discuss the issues that are related to the private aspects of the life of the detainees.
Okay, fair enough.
Doctor, this past 2 weeks since the arrest, there has been demonstrations of public support and sympathy for the accused ex-president. Does this usually happen at the ICC? Because from my little knowledge of the ICC, I don't usually see this gathering of people in support of an accused. In the past, does this happen?
Well, first, Mr. Duterte is, for us, a suspect. He's not an accused. We only use the term of accused if there are confirmation of one or more charges. And second thing, yes, I have a long experience at the ICC, and I have seen many different cases in which there was also a large support for certain suspects or accused. It is their right. We fully respect the rights of the people to show their opinions and to express their solidarity with certain individuals. But what is important to highlight is that the ICC judges can only decide based on the applicable rules and on the evidence that is presented to them by the parties in the proceedings. So a public show of support, of course, is something that we respect, but it's not something that is taken into account by the judges in a judicial process.
Dr. Hungary is withdrawing from the ICC. Is this impacting on the work of the court in any way?
Well, first, at this moment, there is no withdrawal. As you know, we fully respect the sovereign right of each state to decide whether or not to be or to remain a member of the ICC Rome Statute. There are rules that are applicable, including that a withdrawal becomes effective only 1 year after the deposit of the withdrawal instrument with the United Nations Secretary General Office. You know that because it was already the situation for Philippines in the past. We still hope that this will not happen for Hungary and that there will be a possibility to change this position. We believe that there is a need for more states to be states parties, more solidarity in the global fight against impunity, more commitment to the international accountability mechanisms, because we are facing global challenges, all of us, and the only way to deal with the global challenges is actually to have international mechanisms where all the states can come together and work together.
How about the punitive threats of U.S. President Trump? The most powerful president in the world at this point. Are they already being implemented? His threats about freezing accounts, his threat about banning...
he's gone so far as issue an executive order, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, banning judges or prosecutors from the U.S. For entering the U.S. Are these punitive actions already implemented by the most powerful president in the world right now?
Well, in relation to the ICC relationship with the American administration, you know that there has been several changes over the past. There was already a few years ago with the first Trump administration, there was already sanctions that were imposed back then on the previous ICC prosecutor and on some of her staff employees as well. Then this was changed and lifted in the next administration. Currently, there is, as you mentioned, an executive order, and there is one designation of sanctions against the current ICC prosecutor. Of course, the ICC is aware of all of that, and we are taking all the necessary measures to mitigate any potential impact of such decisions on the ICC work. It's our duty and our mandate to continue working for justice and for the victims that deserve this justice. And we will continue to do that independently of any kind of political or otherwise attempts to pressure the court. The court can only deliver on its mandate, applying the legal framework that was given to us by the states parties and working towards more just work.
Does that include offsetting measures in case the U.S. pulls out funding support?
Well, the U.S. is not a state
party
to the ICC, and thus the U.S. is not funding the ICC in any way.
Doctor, our current president has said that, well, he was asked about it, and he said that he is studying the possibility of the Philippines rejoining the Rome Statute. Has the ICC received any word, anything, any rumor, or any
indication,
any message from the Philippines that we might actually be rejoining the ICC?
Well, I don't have access to behind-the-scenes potential or eventual discussions, so I cannot. I'm not in a position to confirm this, but it will be very welcomed if Philippines and all the other states join the ICC Rome Statute. As I was mentioning, impunity is a big challenge on the global level, and the only way to tackle this global challenge is by a global fight against impunity.
I want to come back to that initial appearance by Rodrigo Duterte to the pre-trial chamber court. At that time, his lawyer, Salvador Medjildea, made a manifestation saying the arrest was an extrajudicial rendition, essentially a kidnapping. That part was unexpected. What did the judges make of that? Do we know?
Well, if I understand well, there is a discussion about this before the Philippines court. So first, we need to see what would be the decision there. And if there would be a request related to this matter before the ICC judges, it will be for the ICC judges to decide on it. At this moment, since there is no decision, I'm not in a position to elaborate further or to speculate on what might be if there would be eventually a request.
But is that a non sequitur? Even if there's a case here, will that affect the jurisdiction of the ICC? Because as far as the little I know is that the ICC doesn't care about what happened here. What they care about is the evidence during the trial or the confirmation process. Is that relevant to the ICC case, whether there are illegalities or whatever here in the Philippines?
Well, again, I will not speculate. If there would be a consideration that there was an unlawful arrest or detention, it would be for the judges, if they will receive a request to that effect, to decide on what is the impact of such matter on the ICC proceedings.
Okay.
Doctor, can the ICC provide protection to witnesses and the prosecution lawyers? I ask because the lawyer, one of the assistants to counsel in the Philippines, and her clients, who are relatives of victims of the drug war, are saying that they are being subjected to harassment and even physical threats of physical violence in the Philippines.
Well, first we need to make a distinction, a clear distinction for everyone between victims and witnesses. Witnesses are individuals who are called by either the prosecution or the defense or eventually the judges to provide a testimony, a certain information that might be valuable for the judges. And in the vast majority of the cases, witnesses are not victims. We can speak about insider witnesses, about expert witnesses, all different types of witnesses. Only a very limited number of victims may be at the same time called to testify. So victims in the vast majority are not witnesses, and witnesses in the vast majority are not victims. Now, of course, there is a protection program for the witnesses and eventually for other individuals if they are at risk because of their interaction with the ICC. But this type of protective measures depends, of course, on what is the level of risk that they may be facing and what can be done in order to mitigate this risk. And in all our interaction with victims or with other individuals, there is a matter that is very important, which is confidentiality and discretion. And of course, the court puts all the necessary measures to ensure the anonymity and that the identity of the witnesses and eventually of the victims are not revealed in a way that may be causing them to run a risk.
How do you do that, Doctor, knowing that the limits are resource-wise and organization-wise of the ICC is not that huge? Can you, for example, if there are a lot of people applying for protection, does the ICC has the power to request member states to support or protect these individuals?
Well, first we need to assess what is the cause of the risk and what is the level of the risk for people that are at risk because of their interaction with the ICC. Then, of course, the ICC would have a duty to offer a protection to them. And then we need to see what is the level of the risk and what measures are necessary to ensure that they are protected. Sometimes just keeping confidentiality, discretion, and anonymity would be sufficient. In other cases, we may need to have other measures, whether in the location where they are or to bring them to another location. Of course, there is a specific protection program at the ICC, and of course, this is done in coordination and with the support of the states.
Talking about power, does the ICC have the power to order a freeze on Duterte's assets if it comes to that?
There is a possibility for the judges to order the freeze of assets for suspects. Now, it depends, of course, on the implementation, on the obligation of the states to cooperate, etc. But yes, there is a possibility for the judges to order a freeze of asset if it is necessary, for example, to ensure the payment of reparations if we get to a reparation phase, which can only be discussed after a trial and after a potential conviction. If there is no conviction, we are not discussing reparations. But it can also be ordered to ensure that this possibility is open. It can be also used to cover the expenses of the defense of a certain suspect. So yes, by law, there is a possibility for judges to order a freeze of assets.
And how would that play out? Would you then need the state party to cooperate, or in this case, the Philippines is no longer a state party? So how would that work?
Well, I would not enter into a speculation about this. If there will be a decision from the judges, then of course we would seek the cooperation of the relevant authorities.
Okay.
Theoretically,
Doctor, is there a reasonable chance that there will be more arrest warrants in connection with the war on drugs?
Well, what I know is that the ICC prosecutor office is continuing its investigations, and if they consider that they have enough evidence against other individuals, it may be brought to the judges. And then the judges will have to decide whether or not to issue arrest warrants.
Theoretically, Doctor, if a suspect becomes formally accused and will be put in detention in the ICC detention center, can he intermingle or interact with other detainees, or will he be separated like in a solitary confinement?
No, it is possible for the detainees in the ICC detention center to actually meet each other unless there is a specific reason or order by the judges. Like, for example, in previous cases, we had several detainees that were related to the same case or to the same alleged facts. And it is possible then for the judges to order that these two people do not meet. But the general rule is that, yes, the detainees in the same facilities can meet each other.
On March 21, the ICC announced that the prosecutor has already turned over 181 pieces of evidence to the defense, but it's also our understanding that there might be more. I wonder if you could give us more insights on this, Dr. Fadi. How much more, and what kind of timeline are we talking about?
Well, unfortunately, I don't have this type of information because it's a matter for the Office of the Prosecutor to disclose the evidence that he intends to rely on during the confirmation of charges to the defense. But the total amount of the evidence and the timing of the disclosure is something to be dealt between the parties under the supervision of the judges, and I don't have access to this information currently.
Okay.
Just in case, Doctor, that there's enough strong evidence to warrant another international warrant to another accused Filipino in relation to these crimes against humanity, and that suspect goes into hiding, usually how does the ICC confront this eventuality? Because for now, you have several, I think 14 or 15 people still at large who have been issued international warrants by the ICC. So what do you usually do in these cases?
Yes, there are several individuals and suspects against whom arrest warrants have been issued that remain at large. And of course, the ICC does not have its own police force or army to arrest them. The ICC relies on the cooperation of the states. States that are parties to the ICC Rome Statute, they have a legal obligation to cooperate and to arrest these individuals if they are on their territories. States that are not parties, they may decide to cooperate on a voluntary basis, and that would be a great thing because it will show their commitment to the international law.
Okay.
Doctor, since the arrest of former President Duterte, has the ICC received any communication, any form of communication from the Philippine government?
Well, again, I don't have access to any confidential material, so I would not be able to confirm or not this type of information. All public documentation are made available on our website, of course.
Okay, we're going to have to leave that there. I think we've taken up much more of your time than we'd asked for. Thank you so much for your answers, though, and your insights. That was ICC spokesperson Dr. Fadi El Abdallah, also the head of the Public Affairs Unit of the ICC. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Thank you,
Fadi.
Doctor.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You're watching Storycon on One News. We just need to take a very quick break. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
This is the Story Conference Group or the Storycon Group.
We've got the developing news and the stories behind the headlines. Welcome back to Storycon. I'm Regina. Still with us, Amy Pamintuan of the Philippine Star. Where are you, Amy? There. And Ronald Llamas, a resident political pundit. Amy, where are you?
Seryoso si Ronald.
English
Seryoso na usapan eh.
Jinglish eh. Mahirap mag-joke pag Jinglish.
Merong joke na pinag-uusapan ngayon, ha? Usapan na lahat ngayon, yung bad joke.
Oo nga, joke ba
Doon
yun?
sa kampanya, ano ba yun?
Oo nga. Nabigyan na ng show cause order, Amy.
Yeah,
It's a
I know.
violation of election rules daw. Oo nga naman, tama naman. Actually, may trivia ko. I actually know that guy. Si Attorney
What is
Sia.
he? What kind of person is he?
You know, sa totoo lang, nagulat ako at what he said. Because I know him to be a corporate lawyer. This is many years ago, Hindi ko alam, ano nangyari sa
Alam ko,
kanya.
may naghahanda ng disbarment case sa kanya.
Talaga?
For moral
Yeah.
turpitude.
That's a really awful joke. You cannot
Yeah,
describe it as a joke.
Yeah, correct. And nag-apologize siya,
Ano
but
naman
it
yan?
wasn't really an apology.
He wasn't even apologizing. It was a joke daw, sabi niya.
And he blamed the uploader pa
Baka na-inspire siya dun kay Digong, dun sa kanya mga rape jokes.
ni Digong. Oo. Ayun na yung apology pala na
Hanggang
hindi ko
pa yung-
mabasa eh, but
A non-apology.
it's a pretty long
Kaya nga, biro,
non-apology.
it's a joke, ha? You cannot joke about it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Kaya may naghahampa.
You know, there are 15 million single parents,
parents,
in the Philippines. At lahat yan, karamihan dyan, mga babae, naghihirap yan, ano?
Oo.
You cannot joke about their suffering.
Oo.
Di man lang kung kamukha man lang ni Chaon mo, no? Ha?
I
He
mean,
thinks it's God's gift to women.
kaya nga and I mean, you know,
Huh?
it wasn't hindi lang joking about the suffering, but the fact na parang it came from nowhere. Alam mo yun?
Yeah.
Parang
Oh.
Yan yung klarong toxic masculinity.
as opposed to
Masculine ba? Misogyny.
Hindi, kasama na yun. Kasama na yun. Misogynist. No? Lahat ng is...
Kung kung wala ba siyang kamag-anak na babae, hindi ba na ano yun?
he is a wife.
Wala ba na ano yan? Saka walang ano?
Meron ka ngang
May asawa yan.
meron ka ngang presidente na nag-joke ng rape joke eh. So,
At least akala natin nandun na sa dahig, ano? Baka gusto niya sumunod dun.
baka gusto niya sumunod.
Yung kaninang tanong mo kay Dr. Abdallah, yung ICC spokesperson, you were alluding to ba to?
Yeah.
Ang question mo, question na talaga na gusto mo tanungin is, what happens if nag-issue sila ng warrant pero
Nagtago.
Bato goes into hiding? Oo.
Dahil may 14 active warrants sila eh. 14 or 15.
Around the world yan
In
eh.
relation to the war on drugs.
Usually mga African warlords.
Oo. Hindi. I mean, around the world.
Basta
all
crimes
over.
against humanity. No? Pero sabi ko
Yun
nga,
nga lang, manghihingi silang tulong sa Interpol, di ba? Yun lang ang kaya nilang gawin eh.
actually, pwede silang humingi ng tulong sa iba pa. Alam ko, kahit hindi member ang US ay tumutulong sa kanila. Pag mga kalaban din ng US, halimbawa mga Serbian generals,
Siguro naman
mga Kosovan politicians na talagang nagmassacre. Yun, humingi sila ng tulong sa Amerika, sa United Nations.
But not under Trump.
Yes.
Not under Trump.
Not under
Trump.
Sinabi na ni Trump that...
Under the Democrats. Yan.
Diba nga, that's what Senator Bato is banking on, that Trump will protect, well, if not him, the Philippines, kasi he sees us as an ally.
Baka sabihin ni Trump, Bato who? No?
Pero hindi ba yan daw hearing nga. One of the objectives is to prevent more arrests. Di ba?
Actually, yung objective
Yung
ng
hearing na yan eh.
Actually, yung objective ng hearing, dahil meron ng report si Amy eh. Hindi lang nga siya committee report.
Yan na nga.
May judgment na siya eh. Yung purpose ng hearing is to buhayin pa rin yung narrative na kawawa naman si Tatay Digong, ang tanda-tanda na dinala pa ron. Meron naman tayong working justice system, bakit kinakailangan pandalin dyan? Sabi nga ni Amy, ay kailangan malaman ng kabataan kung anong tama at saka mali. At saka ito ay about rule of law at saka ating sovereignty. na ginagawa tayong province of The Hague. Actually, mahirap tayo gawing province ng The Hague dahil yung The Hague mismo province.
the Netherlands dapat.
Dapat the Netherlands ang sinabi niya, hindi The Hague. No? Kaya,
Pero at this point, wala pa tayong confirmation kung sino pa ang mabibigyan ng arrest warrant, right? I mean,
well, hindi sasabihin sa atin.
Oo, correct.
Dahil
wala ka rin
baka-
nabalitaan.
Baka hindi nila mahulihin eh.
Wala ka rin nabalitaan, di ba?
Ako halos sigurado ko yung susunod.
Magkakaroon din niya ng ano,
yung susunod ay-
siyempre idadaan din niya sa Interpol.
Yes. Ako halos
At
sigurado
magkakaroon
ko.
din niya ng diffusion order.
Oo, na kine-question nila Amy.
Diffusion
Oo.
notice.
Kasi yung
Bakit?
diffusion is an Interpol mechanism.
Yes.
Para nga yan, para hindi malaman nung aarestuhin, na-aarestuhin ka na.
Yun yung ginagamit nila na dahilan kaya wala daw due process. Dahil diffusion pa lang, hinuli na. No? Yun ang sinasabi nila doon sa hearing. Diffusion pa lang, hinuli na.
Hindi
Ang
pa
purpose nga nung diffusion, wag ipaalam.
Kaya nga nag-diffusion,
Kaya nga
para hulihin.
exactly. Oo. Ngayon, sinasabi nila, diffusion pa lang, hinuli na. Parang hindi nila naunawaan kung ano yung logic ng
Dapat
diffusion.
isomo nila yung Interpol kasi it's an Interpol mechanism. It's not an
Yes.
ICC mechanism.
Well,
Paano kung pinost nila as a red notice, malalaman ng lahat. Dahil nakapost sa website eh.
Oo.
Kaya ginawa nila ng diffusion para hindi malaman.
It's a
Correct.
secret.
Yun nga yung
Hindi
point.
naman secret, kundi it's directed at the government
Yes.
Yun nga yung
na
point niya
magke-carry out ng arrest.
from the very start.
Pinagtsagaan kong pakinggan yung Senate hearing eh.
And kahit na walang tao.
Pinakwento ko na lang yan saan.
Kahit na walang tao.
Daming giveaway eh.
Ano pa yung giveaway?
Ayun na, yung mga sinabi ni Kwan, ni Bongo, medyo kumpara sa mga dati niyang mga interventions, napakahaba. No? Tapos yung intervention ni Bato, yung isusumbong kay Trump.
Walang nagpipigil eh. Walang tumitigil ng statement nila.
Kaya nga,
To be honest, medyo nagulat ako Senator Bato showed up kasi parang first Senate appearing niya to, no, since the warrant came out.
Yeah. Kaya nga sabi ko na, syempre, hindi na dadalo yung mga cabinet secretary. Ibang usapin pa, with all due respect, do sa usapin ng executive privilege, sub judice,
May
etc.
conclusion na eh.
No? Aside doon, may conclusion na eh. So, ba't ka pa
May
dadalo?
conclusion na nga.
O, ba't ka pa dadalo? Yung sasabihin mo, yung presence mo, gagamitin lang to support the conclusion. Di ba?
And yet, there will be part 3, di ba?
Oo.
Yeah, that'll
Sabi.
be part 3 on Tuesday.
Ang suggestion ko nga, magdala sila ng salamin. Para kahit walang dumalo, pwede nilang kausapin yung sarili nila. Ginagawa mo yun, Ami. Pag ako nalulungkot, kinakausap ko yung sarili ko sa salamin eh.
Kinakausap ko yung aso ko sa pusa.
Ikaw, hindi mo ginagawa yan?
Hindi ako nalulungkot. I always said,
Hindi ka nalulungkot? Ay, napaka-lucky mo naman.
Talk to my dogs and my cats.
Ayun, I talk to my kids. Yung si Ami, dogs and cats. Ikaw salamin.
I
But,
talk to Manny Mugato.
okay. Ayun na. Okay, we're being told that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for joining Storycon today. Amy Pamintuan, Editor-in-Chief of the Philippine Star, Ronald Llamas, our resident political pundit. Happy weekend. Join us again.
Na-behave ngayon.
Monday, 4 p.m. for Storycon. I'm Regina. We are One News, all sides, all the time. Monday, dala ka ng salamin.
Hindi na ako behave sa Monday.
This is the Story Conference Group or the Storycon Group.